Hello and welcome. Ah, yes, human rights in the UK, a tale as twisty as the River Thames itself, and just as likely to get you bogged down in muddy waters of politics and rhetoric. A Thai friend asked me to explain the problems Britain has with the ECHR, and I thought I would share it with you. Therefore, pull up a chair, grab a drink, and let us have it out. The story of Tony Blair's Human Rights Act and why it came about and how it was hailed as revolutionary, and of course why it drives so many folks, especially our conservative and reform friends, along with many others, up the wall. Imagine having to trek all the way to Strasbourg just to defend your rights while your kettle is boiling cold at home. That is how it was before Tony Blair showed up with a plan. Now, what do unelected judges, parliamentary sovereignty, and deporting foreign criminals have in common? More than you would think, and it ruffles many a British feather. The Human Rights Act, hero to some, villain to others, has been at the heart of British political rows for over 2 decades. What if I told you Britain's fight over human rights is not just legal jargon, but a saga loaded with drama, theatre, and no shortage of grumbling? On top of that, what is longer than a parliamentary debate, more controversial than Marmite, and has Tony Blair's fingerprints on it? You guessed it, the British 1998 Human Rights Act. Now, back in the late 1990s, Britain faced a dull old problem. Our British human rights protection was a bit like trying to fix a leaky tap with chewing gum. Sure, the UK had signed up to the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, but if you, an everyday Brit, wanted to complain about your human rights, you had to pack your bags and head all the way to Strasbourg. Not exactly your local magistrate's court. Nevertheless, enter Tony Blair and his shiny new Labour government. Blair thought, why do we not just bring human rights home? So, in steps the Human Rights Act 1998, designed to allow Brits to use their own courts to challenge violations of rights without the long, expensive trip abroad. The idea was simple, bright, and, dare I say it, rather elegant. It embedded European human rights laws directly into the UK law. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Well, not quite. While the Act was to protect your rights against dodgy public bodies, from the police to local councils, it set off quite the hornet's nest in political circles. Now, just what problems did Blair say the Act would fix? Before this Act, citizens faced a grim catch-22. Your rights were protected internationally, but practically near impossible to enforce locally without immense hassle. Blair saw the Human Rights Act as a way to give regular folks easier access to justice, create checks on government power, which, to be honest, were getting a bit out of hand, enshrine rights domestically so people did not have to rely on distant European courts, stop Parliament from bulldozing individual rights without oversight. Moreover, as Blair put it, create a modern Britain where rights matter just as much as laws. Pretty noble stuff, eh? It was part of Blair's big constitutional reform plan. He wanted Britain to be a place where rights were not just words on paper, but had teeth. However, here is the rub. Why do so many Brits want to toss it? Despite its noble intentions, not everyone is raising a glass to the Human Rights Act. In fact, many want it scrapped. Why? Well, picture this. Some feel the Act has made it harder for the UK to deport undesirable characters, illegal migrants, criminals, terrorists, all the usual villains in the Conservative narrative. They argue the rights granted sometimes protected the wrong sort of people. Others grumble that this Act allows foreign courts like Strasbourg's to boss Britain around, which tugs at the sacred notion of parliamentary sovereignty. Moreover, the bread and butter gripe, unelected judges, those cloaked figures in robes, are very often said to have too much influence, allegedly overruling decisions that our elected parliament made. Imagine a neighbour you did not invite telling you how to run your household, garden and so on. Throw in the usual Brexit-fueled suspicion of European institutions and a pinch of media-fanned populism, and you have a real stew of dissatisfaction. Enter the Conservative critique, what is the beef? For the Tory crowd, Reform UK and many others, this Act is a bit of an existential threat to what they see as a British way, the idea that Parliament is supreme and that judges should not be meddling in politics. Some of their specific criticisms. The Act supposedly emasculates Parliament by allowing judges, who they remind us are unelected, to overrule laws that Parliament passes. It empowers courts to block government actions on human rights grounds, which, according to critics, leads to judicial activism. Judges playing politics rather than interpreting the law. The Act has often been blamed for making it almost impossible to deport foreign criminals, illegal migrants, because Article 8 of the ECHR, the right to private and family life, is often used as a loophole. They want a British Bill of Rights, one that represents or respects the UK's traditions and values and restricts judges' powers so they defer more to Parliament and government decisions. They argue national security and the public interest sometimes come second to sacrosanct human rights under the current system. Now, let us unpack this juicy phrase, unelected judges overruling Parliament. Because it sounds like a royal coup, does it not? Nevertheless, here is the reality. The UK Parliament passes laws and they are supreme. Judges cannot outright overturn these acts. What they can do is declare a law incompatible with human rights. It is like waving a red flag saying, "Oi, there is a problem here." Parliament then decides whether to fix it or ignore the problem. Judges interpreting laws for compatibility with human rights can interpret with certain bounds, but they do not rewrite legislation. Conservatives and many others fret this judicial overreach can shape policy from the bench, bypassing democratic debate. Therefore, it is less about literal overruling, more about judicial influence, and whether that influence is a reasonable check or an undemocratic imposition. Hash it out as you will, this debate underpins a lot of the heat and light around the Human Rights Act. Picture this as a dramatic soap. The Human Rights Act is the new, idealistic protagonist trying to bring justice and fairness to the UK. The Conservatives, as the traditionalists and many others, feel threatened by the upstart who messes with the established order. The judges are weirdly cast as the meddlesome side characters who keep poking their noses where they think they should not. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens find themselves caught in the middle, cheering for rights, but sometimes wondering if it has made bureaucracy a nightmare or if their safety is now compromised by an overly soft approach. In the end, the Human Rights Act is more than just a piece of legislation. It is part of a national conversation about who we are as a country. Should rights be absolute or balanced against security? Should judges have the power to check government, or should elected officials be able to be in charge without interference? Whether one cheers Blair's move as visionary or grumbles alongside the Conservatives and Reform UK, the debate shows that living in a democratic society means wrestling with uncomfortable questions. So, next time you hear someone grumbling about unelected judges or foreign interference, remember, it is all part of that great British tradition. Talking loudly about the rules and never quite agreeing, but still managing to get on most of the time. If this tale tickled your brain or ruffled your feathers, why not join the chat? Drop a comment below with your thoughts on human rights in Britain. Are you Team Blair, Team Conservative, Reform UK or whatever? Or just a grumpy spectator like me? Like, share, and do not forget to subscribe for more tales that make law feel a little less dull and a lot livelier. Goodbye.